As always, it's time to look at everybody's favorite online train wreck, Christian Weston Chandler. This time, we're going to be looking at Chris and law. Chris is no stranger to legal stipulations. Unfortunately, he just can't seem to keep his hands clean. It really do be like that, though. Laws are rules established by a society to protect its members and ensure the orderly function of society. Their observance is usually maintained by law enforcement, and penalties are placed on those who disobey the laws. For Chris, however, these serve as just another deterrent in his endless love quest for China, and a weapon with which to threaten his real and supposed enemies. As of 2018, Chris has 7 misdemeanors, 3 of them hitting Michael Snyder with his car, 1 from macing the yellow-shirted foe, 2 from failing to acquire proper tags for his dogs, and trespassing after being forbidden from the Charlottesville Fashion Square, which resulted in him being placed on the therapeutic docket. Virginia is under a 3 strikes law, which usually means if someone is brought in a third time for a felony or misdemeanor, the sentence, if found guilty, is more severe than usual. In some states, the sentence is life in prison. The rules for this law vary by the states that implement it, some having several 3 strikes laws. Seeing as how Chris has served only a small amount of jail time despite his several misdemeanors, he may not fall under this category. But, since the law in Virginia seems to say that a third-time violent offenders will receive harsh sentencing, and Chris appears to have 2, hitting Michael and pepper spraying, only time will tell when he will strike again. Ironically, in Chris's birth year of 1982, Virginia passed a law that would protect citizens from dangerous repeat offenders. Unfortunately, they could not protect Michael from being run over, the yellow shirt foe from being pepper sprayed, and countless innocent women from being stalked and harassed, all things Chris has done.
I always keep my eyes open for crooks who take my electric hedgehog Pokemon's name and put it in offensive use.
Chris is well aware of the law, and he's not afraid to use it against anybody who takes his goddamn recolors. Understanding. As his grip on reality, Chris's understanding of the law is tenuous at best, and dangerously naive at worst. Chris legitimately believes trolling is illegal. He regularly threatens internet trolls with legal action and makes no distinction in severity between a troll threatening violence against him and a troll uploading a harmless picture of Rosachu with a pickle to the internet. Chris himself is prone to making extremely violent threats, such as threatening to murder Vivian G and her entire family because of her creating the audiobooks. He's done everything from calling the police to convincing his father to write the then President George W. Bush in an attempt to get rid of his Encyclopedia Dramatica page. He has even poorly attempted to impersonate the president in a hilarious attempt to convince the trolls at ED to take down his page, and has attempted to contact the former president Barack Obama to stop people from posting gay ads on the Wikipedia. Chris also believes that the laws in Quickville and the laws stated in Sonichu should be enforced in real life. Chris himself doesn't have much respect for laws and rules, particularly when their enforcement inconveniences him. During his time at Target, he saw nothing wrong with exploiting the free refill policy and loitering for hours at a time in a privately owned establishment while harassing female customers and apparently soliciting hanky-panky. Chris often remarks that his emotional state entirely justifies his actions, stating in Vivid the G's AIM chat that he should be excused for disturbing the peace by literally screaming "No!" loudly in the middle of a crowded mall. Self-contradictory as ever, though, Chris's disregard for many laws does not stop him from rigidly observing others, often with completely skewed priority. In Sonichu Special 4, his cartoon avatar makes a point of obeying the speed limit while on his way to confront Liquid Chris and assault him with a deadly weapon. In a May of 2010 video, Chris states that he believes a man who brutally beat his girlfriend to death with his bare hands deserves 20 years in prison for his crimes, which is just twice the penalty he wants for smoking 1 cigarette. Also, Chris has very little respect for those who enforce the law.
Verbal combat had started, and during the fight, I ran off, still giving verbal punishment, as well as the finger, and many curse-ya-ha-me-ha's. I nearly backed up onto him with my car, and I gave him another finger, then I dashed off.
Excerpt from Chris's diary. The above quote pretty much defines Chris's attitude towards law enforcement officials. He feels it is completely appropriate to flip off, insult, and lie to people who are simply doing their jobs. And, of course, as any other rational person would understand, running away from law enforcement officials is a seriously bad idea. Chris is truly a rebel without a cause or effect. The correspondence with Jackie revealed that in the trial for the Target incident, Chris thought that his work with the Pokemon TCG League let him off the hook. In reality, the court probably acquitted him either on a technicality or insufficient evidence. Chris probably mentioned the volunteer work because he believed a person's merits, no matter how unrelated, would automatically make one innocent of all charges. It is also telling that he recounted the charges as soliciting, whereas the actual charge was disorderly conduct. He feels he was only persecuted because of his love quest efforts, and not because he was tard raging. Of interesting note, it is that contrary to Chris's general political views, he seems to be in favor, or at least accepting, of gun control legislation. Whether or not he has a firm understanding of what he's saying, we'll likely never know. Interestingly, Chris seems to have a very skewed view on the idea of self-defense, which is exemplified with the acquisition of pepper spray. Pepper spray, like most defensive weapons, should be used as a last resort to keep people from attacking you. As seen in the GameStop attacks, Chris uses it as a means to keep anyone he doesn't like away. Using that event as an example, the man he sprayed wasn't even near him, and Chris decided to spray a quick spritz on his chest without any provocation. It only got worse when, days later, he began a commotion in a Walmart using the device. To Chris, it's the ultimate troll and jerk-off deterrent, when in actuality, he's waving around assault charges on a stick. Legal troubles. The following is a list of incidents Chris has had with the law. This list may not be complete. In a telephone conversation with Ivy in 2009, Bob told her that Chris had in the past 6 or 7 incidents with the law, and yet this article lists only 3 incidents that precede 2010. 2004. On the 11th of September 2004, Chris was detained at Charlottesville Fashion Square for loitering and continually arguing with the staff over several months. The incident is depicted in sub-episode 1. Chris was banned from returning to the mall on his own and without his parents' company. However, it appears that this ban was lifted or ignored soon afterwards. That's right, children. If you get banned from a business, the first thing you should do is return to the scene of the crime. Keep pissing them off. It'll work out great for you. 2005. On the 20th of July 2005, Chris was charged with disorderly conduct and trespassing at Target, as depicted in sub-episode 7 and sub-episode 8. After 2 hearings, prosecutors chose to drop the case and Chris was not punished. 5 days later, Chris caused an auto accident when he followed another car too closely and rear-ended it. This went to court on the 12th of September 2005. He was fined $30 and had to pay $56 in court costs. 2010. Chris's various run-ins at the game place have resulted in the cops being called on him multiple times. At least once after Chris called in his parents after he was initially banned from the location and tried to weasel his way back in, and again when he trespassed on the property, though he wasn't charged with anything on either occasion. On the 4th of June 2010, Chris made yet another pilgrimage to the game place. Chris was armed with his camera, and while Mike was concerned that Chris wanted to take pictures of his daughter for disturbing reasons, Chris maintains that he merely wanted to take a picture of Mike to use as a dartboard. Still disturbing, but in entirely different ways. Chris was caught in the parking lot despite trying to run away and was questioned by the police, who made him delete the pictures he had taken of him and told him to quit his shit. Chris made his 6th of June 2010 video in response to these events. 2011. In a May of 2011 Tomboys and Tomgirls of Virginia post, Chris said that he had begun to use a ladies' restroom at his local mall while dressed in drag. He recounts an incident in which
a woman complains and tattles on me, and a stereotypical brute male shouts me out. I felt embarrassed. When in skirt, I'm going to have to go to ladies because there is no going back for me.
This supposed brute may or may not have been with mall security. In his 3 videos posted after an 8-month-long hiatus from YouTube, he tries to do something of which some viewers of the Chandler Show believe to be blackmail. Chris admitted it by typing word blackmail in tags for last of them. However, trolls hoping for a lawsuit saga shouldn't get their hopes up, because it's unlikely any of the trolls threatened by it would want to report him, given that they've all been trying to get him back onto the internet for months and wouldn't want to drive him off again. Not to mention, Chris probably doesn't have anything on them at all. Note that under Virginia law, his demands are more likely to be considered extortion, still a Class 5 felony, rather than blackmail. In the same video, Chris also point-blank accused Mike of molesting his daughter, all while admitting he doesn't have any concrete proof of this allegation. Given how prone he is to accuse others of slandering him, like pointing out his bad qualities that are extremely evident to everyone but Chris, Chris's accusations are very hypocritical. If Mike did want to sue Chris in civil court, he would indeed have a case against him, as Chris's allegations are textbook defamation. However, it's questionable what Snyder would win in litigation, aside from a PS3 and numerous children's toys. On the 28th of October 2011, Chris ended up in the worst possible scenario, netting a felony charge and 2 misdemeanors in what appears to be a third attempt to enter the gameplays, although all charges were reduced to misdemeanors upon sentencing. As a direct result of his October 28, 2011 run-in with Michael Snyder, Chris had found both himself and his mother on the receiving end of a civil suit. Having been sentenced to community service and put under probation, and being charged with paying Snyder's medical bills, this may very well have been the first time he has felt ramifications for his accusations and threats. However, it is much more likely that he simply doesn't care or still feels as if he were the real victim in all of this. 2012. On the 4th of February 2012, it was revealed on his Facebook that Chris no longer has respect for any sort of law enforcement after the events of the 28th of October 2011, officially deeming everyone who upholds the law a jerk-off. At the same time, he revealed another encounter with the boys in blue that day, as he attempted to pass out flyers at the mall, encouraging others to stay away from the gameplays. 2 jerk-offs, or as Chris puts it, a jerk-off and an accomplice, approached him, despite the officer simply wanting to talk to him and letting him know that he wasn't in any trouble. Chris's paranoia kicked in and he ran. While the story Chris gives seems to hint that the officers just wanted to tell him to knock off the distribution of flyers, Chris believed otherwise, citing that one of them called out his name and making him think they wanted to post another encounter with him on the internet. He escaped by diving into a Mitsubishi, most likely replacing the dying piece of scrap that is Sanchu, and driving off. On the 12th of April 2012, Chris announced the loss of his virginity, giving off strong hints that he had slept with a hired prostitute. He all but confirmed this on the 1st of May, when he said that he found her on the Backpage. Most likely that he found it on the website Backpage.com, a Craigslist clone shut down by the FBI that also solicited prostitutes. Chris's prostitute was codenamed Mia Hamm, as seen on the website. In the state of Virginia, this constitutes a Class 1 misdemeanor and is therefore illegal. It is unknown whether or not Chris is aware of this, but it's very likely that if he is, he simply doesn't care. On the 28th of April 2012, Chris revealed another incident at the mall. Before his Facebook notes on the 30th of March 2012, Chris got into a shouting match with a troll on his cell phone at the mall. The shouting did not go unnoticed, and Chris bolted once security was called in. On the 25th of April, he received a ban from the mall, though it is unknown if it was for that incident or an incident that happened between those 2 dates. On the 10th of July 2012, Chris was arraigned in court for the 20th of October 2011 incident. After calling Snyder a thieving liar in the courtroom, Chris was sentenced to community service and put under 1-year probation. He was also ordered to pay Snyder's medical bills. 2013. In September of 2013, Chris committed an act of vandalism, an arrestable offense, by defacing a Xbox One display at Walmart, but got off easy by merely just being banned from the store. Given his furious reaction of this and his track record with a certain store owner who also did the same, it remains to be seen if Chris would follow up on his threat to have his revenge. Also, much like his tantrum at the Fashion Square Mall in 2005, Chris was confronted by a jerk-off at a local restaurant after scratching a woman's car with his and screaming out loud in public. Chris claimed he was cursing God for all his misfortune recently. 2014. On the 29th of March 2014, a report surfaced on the CWCki forum saying that earlier that month, Chris had been spotted trying to steal merchandise from Best Buy. The next day, Chris denied the truthfulness of the report, but Kim confirms that the attempted shoplifting had indeed occurred. On the 26th of December 2014, Chris vandalized a sonic boom display in GameStop in the Charlottesville Fashion Square. It was forced out due to a previous ban, but not before he attacked a staff member with pepper spray who was calling security. By the 28th, he was confirmed to have been jailed. Oh, that's a classic. Let's take a quick look at the video.
Don't call anybody.
Oh, what are you two saying?
And that was the bar too.
I think we can all agree that situation was resolved in the best way possible. Truly a class act. S-tier efficiency. 2015. Throughout most of 2015, Chris behaved himself, presumably because of his sojourn to the jailhouse was fresh in his memory. His punishment for the pepper spray incident was eventually decided after 7 hearings in October. A very light sentence of a 3-figure fine and a 6-month prison sentence that he wouldn't have to serve unless he breaks the law again during probation. 2016. On July 1st of this year, Chris finally paid his $551 fine from his 2014 to 2015 court hearing. His probation appears to have ended earlier in the year in April. In August, Chris was fined $121 by Greene County for 2 charges, each misdemeanors of failing to acquire dog tag and rabies licenses for his dogs. In November, Chris made several death threats against President Trump. He is blissfully unaware that threatening the president or president-elect is one of the few restrictions on freedom of speech in America, and could land Chris with a fine and/or up to 5 years in prison. On these 2 sheets, we can see the information about Chris's court hearings regarding his dog tag and rabies shots. Or well, the ones his dog should have received. 2018. In March, Chris was charged with trespass after forbidden, a misdemeanor count. The offense occurred on the 23rd of March and was filed under the Albemarle Traffic and Criminal Court. According to a Kiwi Farms user who had purchased a paid request video from Chris, the trespass case was discussed over eBay private messaging, in which Chris purportedly stated,
"The manager of the mall threw a damned late trespassing notice against me while I was there a few weeks ago. That is all. Caught me in a trap like the place, except I didn't go to freaking jail, okay?"
Damn, he seems kinda passive-aggressive. It's just a misdemeanor, Chris. It's not a big deal. People would like you more if you were a touch more friendly. Chris was represented by a public defender. After several continuances, the court decided to direct Chris to a court diversion program, the therapeutic docket, for 9 months as an alternative to a jail sentence. The trespass case was transferred to Charlottesville jurisdiction on the 10th of July to supervise the docket check-ins, until Chris graduated from the docket on the 23rd of April 2019, resulting in the court dismissing his trespass charge. On the screen now you can see the docket information concerning his trespassing case. It seems he would appear twice a month until everything was finalized. 2019. The 23rd of April saw the early end of Chris's therapeutic docket and the dismissal of his trespassing after forbidden charge. Chris trolled himself again on the 5th of August when he absent-mindedly hit someone else's vehicle with Sanchu. Police soon came to him and his mother about it. Barb was more involved in the situation at hand, while Chris soothed himself by kicking the police car several times before the police left. Fortunately for Chris, he was not penalized. That's another thing for the kids and the stupid people who watch my content. If you ever have trouble with the law, don't kick their fucking car. It will not end well for you. Chris's parents and the law. It's not hard to figure out why Chris thinks the law should serve him and him alone. His parents, too, have the same problem. When Chris was thrown out of the Cub Scouts after an unknown accident, his parents attempted to sue the Boy Scouts of America for discrimination. When Chris threw a tantrum that required him to be restrained, Bob attempted to sue the school for restraining him. When Mims and Lucas took a picture of Chris and uploaded it to the internet, Chris's parents threatened him with legal action, but as usual never followed through. When Snorlax thought she had indigestion, she acted like she was going to sue the Chinese establishment the food came from. When it turned out to be colitis, she dropped the subject. When Barb and Bob had their absurd case against Greene County used against them, their first reaction was to run to another county. When Alec called the Chandler household posing as the Game Place employee Matthew Noble, Bob and Barb claimed that taking pictures of somebody without their knowledge or consent was not illegal. This came after threatening to sue Mims and Lucas for doing exactly that. During that same call, Bob would not countenance the idea that an individual can be prohibited from a private property, saying it's a business place, which has no bearing on private property laws. On the 28th of October 2011, Barb was arrested for not only fleeing the scene of an accident, but also felony assault on a police officer, an extremely foolish crime that a remotely sensible person would never commit due to the serious consequences attached to it, mandatory minimum of 6 months imprisonment on conviction. However, the recent death of her husband, her age, her bad health, and her hopeless, dependent clod of a son seem to have helped elicit her some clemency. On the 10th of July 2012, Barb was arraigned in court for her participation in the 28th of October 2011 incident. She was sentenced to community service and served 2-year probation. Chris's original and official laws. Chris believes the police in real life are corrupt and sees them in the same light as he sees the jerk-offs in his comic. The jerk-offs act as a stand-in for police who wronged him and are portrayed as being imposters with no legal authority, probably indicating that Chris does not recognize real policemen as a legitimate authority. In light of these things, Chris has his spin on the law. The penalties for drinking, smoking, and internet harassment involve physical violence, including a kick in the teeth, which Chris inexplicably portrays as a punch in the first and only of his supposed series series of Q&A videos. On the 31st of December 2009, Chris orated about a law he wanted to be made to prevent Jack Thaddeus from using the ad space he paid for.
I have the instinct, and I have already snail-mailed President Barack Obama on how this sort of bad advertisement is going on, and how it is wrong and should be made illegal, on how if the main captain does not want or is offended with the listed ads within his own website or works, regardless of who controls the ad space, would remove those ads or face jail time, and the FBI would be fully involved in all of this, and they have the power, tools, and balls to seek, hunt down, and bring in the individual internet trolls and ad spammers.
As one can see, Chris is seeking the direct intervention of the president of his country and beseeching him to outlaw advertisements he doesn't like. Aside from the fact that Obama himself couldn't have done anything about this, the fact is that Chris was mandated by law to display the ads Jack paid to display. Chris should have written his congressman about this rather than the president, but either way, he would have received no response. This attitude was also reflected in his relationship with Mary Lee Walsh. More than a decade ago, she put a stop to Chris soliciting sex on her campus. War ensued, and Chris received a well-deserved timeout for his behavior. 6 years later, in 2009, Chris decided it was time to make peace. He went to her office and left her a framed, hand-drawn apology on her doorstep out of the blue. Her reaction was to file a trespassing notice. Chris disastrously believed that since he didn't read the letter and returned it to the sender, he wasn't liable for it. Thankfully, Chris didn't trespass again. Mailbag 55 posits a few more original laws. 1. That it should be illegal for men to ever show their bare chest, because, according to Chris, no one in the entire world ever wants to see a man's bare chest, presumably disregarding women, gay men, and boxing enthusiasts. And 2. He wants to force all women in any kind of relationship to wear rings, purely for his benefit of course, thus defeating all symbolism and significance of them. In the aftermath of distancing himself from the internet, Chris began to formulate a new law, the Bill of the Anti-Online Bad-Mouthing, starting with his second flip note, "Don't get trolled." The details are unknown, but Chris essentially wants to make it so that online, nobody can ever speak negatively of anybody else under threat of prosecution. There do exist laws against cybercrime and online harassment, but these laws vary by country and concern rather more serious deeds than drawing Rosachew with a dick. And so even if Chris's laws were somehow implemented federally, only his fellow US residents would be held accountable. Chris is failing to comprehend that people besides Americans use the internet, or worse, assuming the entire world can be held to the USA's laws. In Quickville. During the Idea Guys saga, Chris was told that Jamsta Sonichu had been put on trial for molesting Punchy. Chris didn't want Jamsta to suffer in jail as he had, so he tried using his psychic powers to talk to the Quickville judge to convince him to release Jamsta, regardless of the crime he had committed. The Idea Guys informed him that the judge was unconvinced since Chris was no longer mayor, so Chris then turned his attention to the jurors. This worked but sparked a citywide riot. In the comic. The law, such as it is, in the comics is a horrifying totalitarianism where anybody is subject to the whims of a dictator. In Quickville, Chris is mayor, read God King, and has banned many things in his city. Smoking or drinking alcohol would lead one to be either sentenced to 10 years in prison or a $1,500 fine, which Chris considers an equally bad punishment. Quickville has its own currency, despite being nothing more than a small city, and why fines are levied in USD is unknown. Importing tobacco or alcohol incurs a greater punishment than murder or rape. However, it should be noted that Chris repealed the law against alcohol in June of 2009. It seems at one point Quickville used to have a police station, but I suppose Chris went on to the social worker method. I'm sure it's working wonderfully in that beautifully demented town. The Rosachews often congregate to protest for women's rights. These protests usually involve nudity and or pornography. They campaign for basic, archaic things like the eligibility to vote, suggesting Chris, or one of his predecessors, has imposed discriminating laws against women in Quickville. It is never clear whether or not Quickville is legally part of the United States, and thus subject to its federal laws, as Chris characteristically sends mixed messages a lot. Some things are distinctly American, the aforementioned USD fines for instance. But Quickville has its currency and its own set of laws, the likes of which would never be permitted in a developed or even undeveloped country, even if Quickville were some sort of Vatican-like sovereign state. The only arrangement that makes the slightest amount of sense is that Quickville is just that, a sovereign state on US soil. Chris doesn't seem to have thought this out though, and believes the mayor of a town is legally entitled to act as an authoritarian dictator. As a mayor, Chris does nothing bureaucratic ever, and makes his secretary do all the paperwork, as per his thoughts on women, while he goes off on another one of his sweetheart searches. He has mandated dating education classes for students so they can learn how to go on dates, as well as how to stay straight. Actual police officers did not appear until quite late in the series, and even then, they did nothing whatsoever, giving the impression that Chris and his Pokemon abominations are the only thing standing between peace and violent anarchy. However, Sonichu number 9 seems to reveal that there are 3 sets of other protectors and possibly a nondescript police force, distinct from Mary Lee Walsh's Jerk-Ops, as well as his team of Power Rangers and a team of Transformers. In conversation with Jack Thaddeus, Chris revealed that Quickville is the home of a paramilitary force equipped with tanks which he uses as a police force, and all his Electric Hedgehog Pokemon enjoy immunity from prosecution and are above the law. Add this to the fact that Chris cannot be deposed as mayor, there is no elections, and the fact that the police and a fleet of superpowered goons obey anything Chris demands of them, and it paints a very frightening picture. According to Chris, Magi-Chan mentally scans the city perimeters for any sexual acts and reports any homosexual activity to the authorities. The participants are then tried and fined heavily, $500 or 50 hours of community service. Apparently in Quickville, the 4th Amendment of the US Constitution does not apply to matters of personal sexual choice, and neither does the US Supreme Court ruling finding sodomy laws to be unconstitutional. Even though Chris's deranged laws only exist in his city, state, country, whatever of Quickville, he exacts his deranged fury unto people whether they're actually in his jurisdiction or not. Sonichu number 10 shows 4 distinct crimes committed outside of Quickville: the destruction of the 4-cent garbage building, the murder of over 100 alleged trolls in the said destruction, breaking and entering, and destroying internet files and property. There was no evidence to suggest that this act of mass murder was even investigated by the authorities, and the comic portrays this act of terrorism as Chris and his goons heroically defeating a gang of criminals. Chris may be able to murder without being reprimanded. Following the death of Simonla, the culprits, Alec, Mao, Sean, and Evan, are subjected to a show trial and given no defense attorney by the state, violating the 6th Amendment, forcing Sean to act as their lawyer despite being high as a kite. There is no solid evidence presented for the murder charge, aside from the Voltorb remote, which the prosecutor never tried to prove belonged to them, and wholly unreliable psychic evidence extracted from Magi-Chan. When they're railroaded and found guilty, they're killed by the people they've wronged. Read, murdered brutally by cartoon characters, in a gross violation of the 8th Amendment forbidding cruel and unusual punishment, demonstrating Chris's limited understanding of trials, as his knowledge of trials stems purely from television. The Kangaroo Court integrates both elements of civil and criminal trials. The Asperpedia 4 are not only prosecuted for murder by a state attorney, as per a criminal trial, but also charged with defamation of character, libel, and copyright infringement, as well as several charges such as profanity to the max that would hold no water in an actual court, by Chris and his cohorts as per a civil trial. Surely enough, Chris, Sonichu, and Rosichu are sitting in a benchmarked plaintiff. That both civil and criminal charges are included in one trial not only demonstrates a poor understanding of the courtroom process, but is further proof that Chris considers slanderous mockeries and other torts on par with major crimes such as murder and assault. To add to the equation, one cannot be given a death sentence, or any sentence for that matter, for being guilty in a civil trial, but in the Asperpedia 4 trial, civil charges are the primary reason for the death sentence. In summary, the Quickville court system is a constitutional nightmare that violates multiple articles and amendments and has no concept of due process. One must wonder why it is allowed to exist within the borders of the US. Were it not obvious by now, any semblance of law in Quickville exists solely to further the wishes of its tyrannical and murderous creator god. And I guess that's gonna do it for today's video.
Oh, fuck me. Sorry, it's been a while.
What the fuck are you doing here? I thought you got sucked into that wormhole or whatever the fuck that was.
You honestly think it's gonna be that easy to get rid of me? I've been looking for you for a while. I've been lonely.
Actually, I kind of enjoyed the peace and quiet. You're a bit of a pain in the ass to deal with.
And I'm guessing you still have no idea what's going on, right?
Cross my heart and hope to die, I genuinely have no fucking clue what you're talking about.
Well, it's been several months in that goddamn void, so I'm gonna rest for a little bit. You can go ahead and finish up whatever you were doing, okay?
Thanks for the permission, asshole. Anyways, that's gonna do it for today's video. If you like what I do, please comment, rate, and subscribe. If you want to support me in a more personal way, you can check out the Patreon link and the Teespring link in the description. I've got a new special version of a fan favorite t-shirt for my Teespring, showcased on the screen now. Isn't it snazzy? I sure think so.
It's shit.
I've got more stuff coming down the pipeline. But until then, I'll see you degenerates next time.